Welcome to the Spaceship tutorial for the Gravity Engine asset. There's a new feature in Gravity Engine 1.2 to predict the orbit of a spaceship given its velocity that we'll demonstrate in this tutorial. Start with an empty scene and we'll add a Gravity Engine. And we'll grab this prefab down here, star with ring, and put it in the scene. What we have here is a central star with mass 1000, and you can see here the dust ring. We'll just set up the scene a little bit by moving the camera far enough away to give us a big view. We'll get rid of the skybox and set the background color. And we'll just take a quick peek at what we've got so far. We have a ring of about 800 particles orbiting a central star. Gives us a little bit of a backdrop for our spaceship to move in. Our spaceship is going to move in 3D, so it would be useful if we had a way of changing the camera angle so that we can see the 3D. What we'll do is add a boom object. We'll create an empty game object. We'll call it camera boom. We'll put the main camera on there. We'll correct for this little offset that's crept in, and to the camera boom we'll add the camera spin script. That's a script that comes with the Gravity Engine in the samples directory. What it does, if you look at the update loop here, is it just gets a key and then applies a rotation. And since this game object holds the camera object, what we end up with is as if the camera was at the end of a boom pointing at the origin, spinning around the origin. When we play, the resulting effect, if we press S, we change the camera in that axis. If we press A, we change the camera in the other axis. So that'll allow us to get a sense of the 3D-ness of the scene. So now let's move on to the main point of the tutorial, which is the spaceship. So there is in Gravity Engine 1.2 this spaceship prefab, which we'll just grab and put into the scene. And we'll have a look here. So that's what our spaceship looks like. It's positioned some distance, I guess minus 25 from the star. It has an n-body script attached. It has no mass. It has a spaceship model which consists of the various components plus a thrust cone that I'll explain in a moment. Attached to the spaceship model is a script called Spaceship, and this is what's going to be doing most of the work for us. This existed in Gravity Engine 1.1. What the Spaceship script does, if we move over to the Spaceship script, it's also key press driven. And in this case we use the arrow keys. So the arrow key code is down in this block here. So arrow keys rotate the spacecraft. We have an F key which will apply thrust using Gravity Engine apply impulse. And we've added in this version of the Spaceship script the ability to pause the scene if you want to adjust your orientation and thrust. You can press spacebar, pause the scene, make your adjustments, and then when you go back to running, we'll apply the thrust that you have defined. So as it is right now, if we just, for example, give the spaceship a little bit of initial velocity, say y5, and press play, spaceship moves in some path. We don't know exactly what it's going to do, but we can change the orientation of the spaceship by pressing the arrow keys, which is what I'm doing here, and it just continues in its orbit. I can press F and we're changing the orbit, but we can't really see how. In order to visualize the orbit, what we want to do is take an orbit predictor script and put it in the scene. So let's create an empty game object to hold that, which we'll call orbit predictor. And we'll add to this the orbit predictor script. And two things get added to the object. We add a line renderer and we add the orbit predictor. Orbit predictor is quite simple to configure. You need to tell it what object is providing the gravity, which in our case is the star. So we'll grab the star and put that as the center object. You need to tell it which object we want to predict the orbit for, so we'll do body. What it's going to do is, based on the velocity in every frame, map those into a series of orbital elements and populate the line renderer points with that orbit. So in order to see that, we need to have some material in this line renderer. So let's pick red for our orbit. And we need a suitable size, which is going to be about 0.4. And so that's all we needed to do to set up our orbit predictor. So now if we press play, we can see the orbit that the spaceship is on. We can press space in the scene. We can change the orientation, and if we now use the plus and minus keys, and I have a little addition here that shows a thrust cone on the rocket to give you a sense of the direction it's firing. You can, as you pivot the object, it will show you the change in the orbital path. It will also, if your velocity gets bigger and the orbit becomes a hyperbola, show you the hyperbola path. And if we decide we want to make our orbit move in 3 dimensions, and we move the camera so we can see what's going on, we can see that with an appropriate change in orientation, we get orbits that come out of the plane of the rings. And if we press spacebar, we see that the orbit that's predicted is the orbit the object will actually follow under the gravitational influence. And that's our demo of the orbit predictor. You could see one could take this and start to use it as the beginning of a game to, for example, match your orbit with the orbital rings and mine asteroids, or try and stay out of the asteroid belt to avoid destruction. There are lots of possibilities. Thanks for watching.